Hello and welcome to America Salutes its Veterans. We have so many veterans in our nation that have done such a wonderful job, and there are many veterans benefits that many will need. To help us look into how to find out if you're eligible for these veterans benefits and how it can serve you is Lynn Lyons from Hennepin County, and Lynn is a Veteran Service Officer, and Milton Schoen from Hennepin County, who is the Director of Veteran Service.
Thank you, Judy. We want to talk about the GI Bill for the 21st century, which is a landmark piece of legislation that is going to allow veterans to move from Iraq to college to the workforce. And it has got some unique provisions, and veterans will have to make choices. One of the things is that you have to have qualifying service after 9/10/2001.
Can I stop and say, so the very first leap you must make is what?
You have to have service. You have to have your military service.
And the date is?
And after 9/10/2001. And you have to have a minimum of 90 days active duty. If you had a service-connected disability, you had to have 30 days, and that service-connected disability made you get out of the military. But I don't want to get into those details. But many of our veterans have already gone to school and they've used the current GI Bill. Mm-hmm. They have to make a choice between using this new GI Bill and its generous provisions and the old GI Bill. The new GI Bill is only for higher education. The old GI Bill, you could use it for trade schools, you could use it for other schooling, for apprenticeship programs. You can't do that under this new GI Bill that it's designed for institutions of higher learning. Additionally, it will pay up to the maximum in-state tuition for the most expensive public school in the state, which is the University of Minnesota.
Tell us, Lynn, some things about the bill.
Well, the bill would pay anywhere from 40% to 100% of the total cost, whether books, the tuition cost. So it depends on the length of service.
Right. And among other provisions, the big one is that you get 15 years to use this. The old GI Bill was 10 years, and Lynn will get into some of the ramifications of that later. It provides a housing allowance, a book allowance, the tuition, as we mentioned, and it becomes effective August 1st.
So, Lynn, what do you really think this bill does?
What I think is that it gives them more benefits. It pays for more. And the time length, to me, that's very important, because under the old GI Bill, they had 10 years from when they got out of the service to use that, and then it was done with. This one is 15 years. And I think that that's really important, especially more so for women veterans, because there's probably about anywhere between 15 to 20% of the women of the armed forces is women, and they are of childbearing years. So they get out of the military, and if they want to start their family, they can do that and still have this bill that would allow them to go to school later. And I think that's very important, that they don't have to get out and say, oh, I've got to get to school or start my family. Sure. They have more time. And I think that's a great benefit.
How are they going to learn about this bill?
By watching the show.
They would need to call. I would encourage anybody to call, and it will give you more details than what we can provide right now. But to call the 1-800 number.
It's up on the screen.
Good.
It's on the screen. But what I'm understanding is this is a very complex bill, and you don't want to make it overly complex. But what are the most important things that you want our viewers, our veterans, or their families, or their friends to know about the bill?
Well, they have to make an irrevocable choice. Do they want this educational program, or do they want the Montgomery GI Bill or the Reserve or Guard bill that might cover them? So they have to make that decision. They can be paid as low as 40%, because if somebody was called up and had a shorter period of qualifying service, they get paid at a lower rate. So
what does that mean, a shorter? What does that mean?
Well, let's say you came in before September 11th, and you only had several months of qualifying service, then you might be paid 40%. We might have somebody who goes to National Guard and they get sent to Iraq, and they've got maybe 16 months of qualifying service, and they'd be paid like maybe 60% under this bill. And it varies based on the months of qualifying service, so it's very complex. And people need to be informed about the choice that they're going to make. And that's one of the reasons that Lynn and I are here, to get the information, to get people to call the VA.
And I think one thing is important when we're talking about the qualifying service is that the VA is subtracting their entry-level training from qualifying service. So say...
all right, explain that.
So somebody goes into, let's say, the Army.
Like boot camp is entry level?
Boot camp, their initial school training, AIT, A school, tech school, whatever your particular branch of service.
So what is the training, what is the service that qualifies you for this bill?
After that time. After your boot camp, your
you've
AIT schooling, that gets subtracted from your qualifying time.
And how long can that take?
6 months normally.
6 months? Yeah.
So if a person has 3 months service and they've got 6 months of that type of service, they may only have qualifying service of 2 years and 6 months, so they may qualify at a lower percentage.
They're going to have some kind of a formulaic calculator.
Right, and they do. And
yes.
So they will tell any veteran who calls in or goes online for this, they put in all their information. They'll be able to know exactly how much qualifying time they have, and that in turn will tell them at what percentage of benefits they're looking at, whether it's 40, 50, 60, up to 100%.
And what you're trying to do is tell people there is a new bill.
Right. Right.
And we'd also like to say there's some differences with the old bill. The old bill, a person got a check from the VA. The new bill, the tuition will go directly to the school, and the housing allowance will go to the individual, and the books allowance and other stipends will go directly to the veteran.
Right.
There is another major provision of this bill, because some people decide to go to private colleges that have much more expensive tuition. And there's a provision, if you qualify at the 100% level, that a veteran can, if the school forgives $1 of a tuition, the VA can pay an additional $1. So let's just round out the tuition at the university, that you're at they'll be paid that level, and if the school forgives $6,000 of tuition, the VA can pay an additional $6,000 to that school. And if they go for, if they forgive half of the additional tuition, the VA will pay half, that other half.
Also, the decision about taking the new GI Bill versus keeping the old one, there's also the option of transferring this whole benefit to your spouse, to your child.
Give some scenarios.
I would probably say maybe if a veteran already had a college degree when he went into the military, and when he came out, he was fine. He has this benefit. He could transfer it over to his spouse, and she could, or he could use that benefit.
Well,
would they have the same number of years to use it?
It's based on his qualifying service.
The spouse would have the same number of years, and the child has up until age
26.
26. So they limit it with kids, that you have to finish your school more quickly. And the other thing is, probably the most likely scenario, let's say you've got somebody who's had a traumatic brain injury, and that veteran comes back, he or she comes back, and they may not be in a position to take advantage of it. So you would wind up having the transfer of benefits. And the transfer of benefits is something that the Department of Defense determines whether you qualify for that.